He used that voice, the one he never used with me. Quiet, gentle, like she was made of glass, 7 years and never once for me. His mother looked at me and said, "The server is staring." Not one person said my name. Not one person said, "That is his wife." But I was never powerless. He signed it himself. 43% of his empire, clean, legal, irrevocable. And when I walked in as the owner, he froze.
My Korean Mafia boss husband never lowered his voice for me, only for his ex's tears. Then I walked in as the owner and he froze. He used that voice, the one I never heard him use with me. Quiet, gentle, like she was made of something breakable. 7 years. He never once lowered his voice for me. Not when I was tired, not when I was afraid, not even on the night I almost didn't make it. But for her tears, every time. His mother saw me first. She always did. The server is staring. Someone remind her this is a private dinner. Not one person said my name. Not one person said, "That is his wife." I had worked a double shift. My feet hurt. My back hurt. I had driven 40 minutes to get there because they called me and said come. And I came. Like I was staff. Like I had always been staff. I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I was not powerless. I had never been powerless. They just never thought to check. He signed it himself. On a night when he thought he needed me more than I needed him, a rival family was moving against his empire. He needed clean assets, hidden assets, assets that couldn't be traced back to his name. He chose me because he trusted me, and then he forgot what trust meant. But I didn't forget. I just waited for the right room. This was the right room. Here is what is about to happen. Step 1. The betrayal that finally broke my silence. 7 years of lowered voices that were never for me. Step 2. The humiliation his family built in their own dining room. The one that gave me the reason I needed. Step 3 is where everything changes. Because the paper in my hand proves that Sion Group was never truly his. Not anymore. Step 4. The moment he realized he had been dismantling his own empire, one dismissal at a time. And step 5. The moment I chose myself, in front of every person who told me I was nothing. Stay, because when he froze, I want you to see his face. That face is the whole story. My name is Zara. I met Kai Sion on the worst night of my life, and somehow, that's still the night I'd choose again. He was sitting at table 7 of the restaurant where I worked. Obsidian Grill, 42nd floor. The kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't have prices, because price is not the point. I was 23. He was 29. He looked at me the way people look at something unexpected. Not like I was beautiful. Not yet. Like I was a problem he hadn't anticipated and found interesting. By the end of the night, I had refused to serve his table twice and comped his dessert once because his business associate had been rude to a junior server, and I had told him so directly, in front of everyone. He left a $4,000 tip and asked for my phone number on the receipt. I called him 3 days later. We were married 11 months after that. I want to tell you who Kai Sion was to me before I tell you what he became. He was the man who drove 40 minutes in the rain to bring me soup when I was sick, because I mentioned it once in a text. He was the man who learned to say my name correctly. All the tones and rhythms of it, because he said it deserved to be said right. He was the man who, in the beginning, always lowered his voice when I was tired. The man who made that voice feel like something I could rest in. That man existed. I am not inventing him to make the betrayal hurt more. He existed. And then the empire got bigger, and Mina Yoon came back from overseas. And somewhere in the space between those two facts, the voice disappeared. Not all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you about how love dies. It doesn't go out like a light. It dims, degree by degree. So slowly you keep thinking, maybe tomorrow it comes back. I waited 7 years for the voice to come back. It never came back for me. If you've ever waited for someone to return to who they used to be, drop your city below. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know. The Sion family dinner was held on a Thursday. Bora Sion, Kai's mother, had called me herself, which was unusual. Bora did not call me. Bora summoned the assistant who emailed me, who forwarded the calendar invite. A direct call meant she wanted something specific. We're celebrating the new acquisition, she said. Family only. Be there at 7. I was working a double shift at Obsidian. I still worked there. 3 days a week, because Kai's family had made it quietly known. through the kind of silences and half-sentences that wealthy families perfect, over generations that a daughter-in-law who worked was embarrassing. So naturally, I worked. I arrived at 7:02, still in my uniform because I hadn't had time to go home. I walked into the dining room and the first thing I saw was Mina Yoon. She was wearing a dress the colour of champagne. Her hair was down. She was sitting in the chair that had for 4 years been considered mine. Kai was beside her. His hand was over hers. His voice, the voice, was soft and low. He was saying something that made her laugh. Bora was at the head of the table watching me watch them. "The server is staring," she said pleasantly. Someone remind her this is a private dinner. Laughter. Easy, comfortable laughter from the people I had cooked Sunday meals for, attended birthdays for, sent anniversary gifts on behalf of. Kai looked up. His expression didn't change. "Wait outside," he said. "Not, I'm sorry you had to see this. Not, let me explain. Not even my name. Wait outside." I stood there for a moment. "Just long enough, Jisoo." His sister was looking at her hands. Daewon, his brother, was refilling his glass. The 7 other people at that table had each made a private calculation and decided that staying quiet was the correct investment. "Of course," I said. I walked back to the entrance. I picked up the tray I had set down when I came in, and then I made a decision that had been building for 7 years without me fully understanding it. I did not wait outside. I drove home. I took a shower. I opened the safe in the bedroom that Kai didn't know. I knew the code to. He had set it himself, never imagining I would watch closely enough to learn it. I took out the folder that Marcus Webb had given me 3 years ago, on a quiet afternoon, when Kai had asked me to sign documents he'd explained as protective asset transfers. He had been distracted, trusting, and in a hurry he had not read what he was asking me to sign. Marcus had. Marcus was my father's college roommate and the sharpest transactional lawyer in the city, and he had called me before Kai's assistant even sent the paperwork. "Read it twice," Marcus had said, "then sign it, and keep a copy somewhere only you know." I had signed it. I had kept a copy. I sat on the bed and read through it again, slowly, for the first time in 3 years. Sion Group Holdings Asset Transfer Agreement. 43% of Kai's primary empire assets transferred to my name. Clean, legal, irrevocable. The man who never lowered his voice for me had, in one desperate night 3 years ago, handed me the keys to his kingdom. And then forgotten he'd done it. Need to tell you something about Mina Yoon. She came back from Paris 18 months ago, carrying a French degree in luxury brand management, and 7 years of being the woman Kai's family had always preferred for him. Bora had introduced them at 19. They had dated for 2 years before Kai went abroad, and Mina went in a different direction. When Kai came back and built the empire, Mina stayed away long enough for him to marry me. And then, when the empire was large enough to be interesting, she came back. I don't hate Mina. I want to be precise about this. I don't hate her. What I hate is the system. The one that said a woman with a French degree and a family name was worth a lowered voice, and a black woman who worked double shifts to help fund his first restaurant acquisition, while he was still building his empire, was worth weight outside. Here is what Mina Yoon did not know. I had been working, not just at Obsidian. I had been studying for 3 years. Business law, asset management, contract structures. The same night classes I had taken quietly, while managing his household and showing up to every family event, with a smile that cost me more than anyone in that room understood. And I had Marcus, who had kept our asset transfer documented, witnessed, and airtight for 3 years, waiting. I called him that night, sitting on the bed in my uniform. "It's time," I said. "I've been ready for 18 months, he said. I did not know that Marcus had also been watching, not just the paperwork, the whole situation. He had connections in Kai's world that I didn't know about. Old family relationships, business overlaps, the kind of quiet loyalties that move through powerful circles without announcing themselves. 3 weeks after the dining room, Marcus called me. "There's going to be a Sion Group board meeting next month," he said. "Acquisition vote. New expansion. The kind of meeting where asset percentages matter." "How much does 43% matter at a meeting like that?" I asked. A pause. "Blocking share," he said. "Without your vote, the expansion doesn't pass." I held the phone. Outside the window, the city moved the way cities move, indifferent, enormous, continuous. Set up the meeting, I said. I went back, not to the house, to Obsidian. I had a shift on Friday. I worked it. I set tables, I ran food, I comped a dessert for a couple celebrating their anniversary, and I smiled the entire time, because that is what the job is, and I have always respected the job. Bora arrived with Mina and Jisoo at 8 o'clock. They asked for my section. I want you to sit with that for a moment. They knew I worked there. They chose my section. Bring us the tasting menu, Bora said, not looking at me, and make sure the wine is cold. The last time someone from this section served us, the wine was room temperature. Of course, I said. Jisoo was looking at her phone. I saw the announcement about the Sion Group expansion, she said, mostly to Mina. Day one says it's basically confirmed. Mina smiled. Kai worked so hard for this one. I brought their wine. I poured it correctly. I answered every question. I did not spill a single drop. As I was walking away from the third course, I heard Bora's voice, carrying the way she always let it carry when she wanted to be overheard. She really doesn't know when she's lost, does she? Showing up to work in his restaurant, serving at his table. Some women just don't have the dignity to leave quietly. Laughter light. Performative. I stopped walking. I turned around. Mrs. Sion, I said, the restaurant you're dining in tonight. I'd recommend enjoying it while you can. The ownership structure is about to become considerably more complicated. Bora's expression didn't change. Is that a threat from my son's server? No, I said. It's a scheduling note. I walked back to the kitchen. I did not shake. I did not cry. I had 1 month. Comment the word counterattack if you've ever stayed quiet in a room where people underestimated you because you already knew what was coming. Tell me. I need to know I'm not alone. Sion Group's quarterly board meeting was held on a Tuesday. Marcus arrived first. He had filed our documentation with the board's secretary 3 business days prior, as required by the corporate charter. 43% properly registered, properly noticed. When Kai walked into the boardroom, the first thing he saw was my name on the shareholder register. Zara Sion, 43%. He stopped. The room had 12 people in it. 3 of them knew what was coming. 9 of them did not. Kai looked at the register. Then he looked at the door. I walked in. I was wearing a charcoal suit. My hair was up. I had a legal pad, a pen, and the asset transfer document in a leather portfolio that Marcus had given me 3 years ago, saying, "Keep this. Somewhere safe." Kai's expression. I need to describe this carefully because I want to be accurate. It was not anger, not immediately. It was the face of a man whose internal model of the world had just failed to load. He had built an entire architecture of assumptions around who I was, what I knew, what I was capable of, and he was watching, in real time, as that architecture revealed itself to be incomplete. "Zara," he said. "Mr. Sion," I said, "I believe we have a vote." The expansion proposal went to the floor. Without my vote, it failed. I voted against it. The room went very quiet. Kai stood up slowly. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I've been studying for 3 years to make sure I understood exactly what I was doing before I did it." "This is my company. 43% of it," Marcus said from the chair beside me, "is hers. As of 3 years ago, properly witnessed and filed. Mr. Sion, your legal team has already been notified." Kai looked at Marcus, then at me. The man who had never lowered his voice for me was now speaking at a volume I had never heard from him before. Barely above a whisper. "Why?" I held his gaze. "Because you waited outside," I said, "and I waited 7 years. The expansion failure made the financial pages by Wednesday morning. Not because of the vote itself. Corporate votes fail regularly, but because of what the vote revealed. That Kai Sion's asset structure contained a 43% stake held by his estranged wife, undisclosed to investors, a fact that constituted a material omission in their recent investor communications. The stock correction happened by Thursday afternoon. I did not celebrate. I want to be clear about that. I took no pleasure in watching the numbers move. What I had wanted, what I had always wanted, was not the destruction of what he built. It was acknowledgement. Simple, decent acknowledgement that I had been there, that I had mattered, that the years I had given were real. He had been given 7 years to offer that. He had offered me wait outside instead. The company structure he had built, the one that required clean assets in my name to protect him from a rival 3 years ago. That structure was his design. I had simply stopped being invisible inside it. The rival family he had protected himself from, they were watching too. Marcus had made sure of it. By Friday, Sion Group's board had called an emergency meeting. Without my cooperation on the restructure, the correction would become a crisis. Kai called me on Saturday morning. The voice was different, quiet, lower than I had ever heard it. "Can we talk?" he said. "Yes," I said. "Have Marcus contact your legal team." 6 weeks later, I walked back into Obsidian, not as a server, as the new co-owner. The acquisition had been part of the restructure negotiation. Obsidian was one of Kai's secondary holdings, a restaurant group he had purchased 3 years ago with clean assets that happened to include mine. The negotiation had been conducted entirely through lawyers, and I had asked for 2 things: Obsidian and a clean legal separation. He gave me both. The night I came back, Bora was there. She and Jisoo were at table 7, my old section, for a dinner with some of the family's social circle. I learned this from the host who called to confirm my arrival time. I dressed carefully, not to perform, just because the moment deserved to be dressed for. I walked in through the front entrance. The host greeted me as Madam. The room registered this. Bora looked up. I watched her process what she was seeing, the greeting, the staff demeanour, the way the room had subtly reorganised around my arrival. Jisoo put down her fork. I walked to the manager on duty, reviewed one operational note with him, thanked him, and turned to leave. Bora said, "Zara, not Madam, not her son's wife, my name." For the first time she said my name. I turned. "He made a mistake," she said. It was the closest she had to an apology. I had learned to hear what people meant when they couldn't say it correctly. "Yes," I said. "He did." I walked out. Comment the word payoff if you've ever walked back into a room that tried to dismiss you and felt the whole thing shift without saying a word. I want to read every single one. 6 months after the board meeting, Obsidian had a new menu, mine. I had worked with the chef for 8 weeks. Every dish was something I had cooked at some point in my life, adapted, elevated, made into something that belonged in a 42nd floor dining room. The review came out on a Thursday. The critic called the menu quietly revolutionary, the kind of food that knows exactly what it is and refuses to apologise for it. I kept that line. My mother was the first person I called. She was a woman who had worked double shifts her entire life. She had never once been told by anyone that her labour was worth a lowered voice. She had built me from the same understanding, that you do the work, you carry the weight, you wait for the room that finally sees you clearly. "Tell me what it looks like," she said. I looked around the restaurant, the tables with their white cloths, the city 40 floors below, the staff moving with the confidence of people who had been told they mattered and believed it. "It looks like it was always mine," I said. "Because it was," she said. Kai and I finalised our divorce 9 months after the board meeting. He signed the papers without a fight. I had not expected that. I had prepared for one. He asked me, once through Marcus, if I would meet with him. I thought about it for 3 days. I said yes. We met in a neutral place, a coffee shop on Meridian Avenue, small table. No lawyers. He looked different. Not diminished, just reordered, like a man who had been rearranged by what he'd learned about himself. "I spent a long time trying to figure out when I stopped seeing you," he said. I let that sit. "It wasn't one moment," I said. "It was 100 small ones. Every time you chose your voice for her and not for me. Every time you let the room decide what I was worth. Every time you waited for me to adjust instead of asking if I was okay." He was quiet. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I said. "I meant it. Not as forgiveness. Forgiveness is a different conversation, a longer one. I meant it as acknowledgement. I heard you. I believe you. It doesn't change what happened, but I heard you." I left the coffee shop with my coat on and my keys in my hand, and the city spread out around me, enormous and indifferent and full of rooms I hadn't walked into yet. I chose myself that day, not dramatically, not with a speech, just by walking out the door and knowing clearly and completely that I was enough. Here is what 7 years taught me. A man who saves his gentleness for another woman is not a cold man. He is a man who made a choice, and every day he makes that choice, you are watching him tell you who you are to him. The mistake I made was believing that love meant I had to keep accepting the answer. It doesn't. You are allowed to require that your name be said with gentleness. You are allowed to require that your presence lower the volume of a room. not raise it. You are allowed to stop waiting for someone to see your value and simply become the person who owns the room instead. She walked away with everything, not because she took it, because she had built it, quietly, carefully, year by year, while they were all looking somewhere else. And when the room finally went silent, she was already standing at the head of the table. That is not a revenge story. That is a recognition story. The difference matters.